Earlier this week on this channel, I covered where we were as far as polling in New Hampshire and Iowa. And it showed that there was a three-way tie in Iowa. What we have is a little bit more information about those polls and a conversation that needs to be had about New Hampshire. As we get closer and closer to what's going to be definitely a very interesting primary season, this is what we have. Morning Joe, they discuss these polling, the polling data, and what it shows to us regarding all of the candidates that are left in the race.
A new poll shows a three-way tie for first place in Iowa between Senator Bernie Sanders, former Vice President Joe Biden, and former Mayor Pete Buttigieg. According to the latest CBS YouGov poll, Sanders, Biden, and Buttigieg are all tied at 23% in the early primary state. Senator Elizabeth Warren follows with 16% of support, down 2 points. Senator Amy Klobuchar rounds out the top five at 7%, also up 2. Meanwhile, in New Hampshire, Sanders and Biden are statistically tied. Sanders leads with 27% of support, up 7 points since November. Biden follows with 25%, up 3. Both sit within the polls' over 5-point margin of error. Warren now sits at 18%, down 13 points. Buttigieg has 13%, down 3, and Klobuchar has 7%, up 4 since November. Some candidates on the move up. Vaughn?
Exactly, and I think the question, look, we're 28 days away here from the Iowa caucus, and when you're looking at foreign policy, is never named as a top priority among Democratic voters, even on the campaign trail here over just the last week alone. The question has hardly come up to these candidates. And yes, you have Joe Biden, you know, the former chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, who Bernie Sanders and Pete Buttigieg questioned his early Iraq war vote. But what you're seeing from these candidates on the Democratic side is a very coherent message. And that's one, well, largely putting their finger up in the air because of a lack of understanding of where the Trump administration's foreign policy is itself is. I mean, look, inauguration is 12 months away from now. And you go back, I mean, even back in October when the Trump administration decided to pull troops out of northern Syria. Even Bernie Sanders condemned the action, saying that the U.S. had decided to abandon its allies. When you're looking at this polling here, what you're seeing is Joe Biden continue to hold on to that large support. If we could pull up that poll there, where you're looking from CBS in that poll there yesterday, voters were asked, who do you think has the best chance essentially to beat Donald Trump? And the folks, they said that 87% of Democratic primary voters think Joe Biden could beat Donald Trump. When you're looking at the rest of the numbers, there's a significant drop-off. And what you've continued to see over the last year is the top priority for Democrats is beating Donald Trump. There's a second poll here. And so what you see in Iowa, an incredibly large share of the Democratic electorate thinking that Joe Biden is the best position to beat Donald Trump. At the same time, there's frankly little enthusiasm for his candidacy. You see there, among the folks that say that these candidates are their top choice, Joe Biden, 49% of folks that name Joe Biden as their top choice say that they're enthusiastic about supporting him. And that's where you see, on the contrary, 67% of the folks that say Bernie Sanders is their top choice say that they are enthusiastic about that. And that's why where you see Bernie Sanders leading in New Hampshire and tied essentially there in Iowa, what you're seeing out of a Bernie Sanders candidacy is one that goes not only among folks that like Elizabeth Warren, but also if you look at the polling, Joe Biden supporters, who do they say their second choice is right now? It's Bernie Sanders. And I'll bring up Andrew Minard. I met him on Friday night at a Pete Buttigieg event over in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. We were having a conversation through the weekend. When we talked in Portsmouth, he said that he was deciding between Pete Buttigieg and Bernie Sanders. Yesterday, I said, who are you going with? And he said, I plan 1 month from now to go with Bernie Sanders. And, you know, and a lot of folks, I think we try to bring this down to is it Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren. And then there's the Pete Buttigieg or Joe Biden wing. But Andrew, he was on top of this and he said, quote, they are both bold and fearless and they exercise discipline and fairness in judgment.
All right. So there you have it now. Just checking out that poll, and you see in New Hampshire, just the Bernie Sanders. That's where I like to look at. Now, of course, Iowa is interesting, the fact that there's a three-way tie there, theoretically. Now, look, that could all change. As has been noted many times, you know, the pollings are nothing but snapshots in time. Things change over days or less than days. Any act, any piece of footage, any new media that comes out, new news that comes out, or new news, any information that comes out may change a person's opinion. They may see an ad on TV, their cousin may call them up, their grandmother may give them grief, and all of a sudden they change their opinion. So these things are very fluid. Never take a poll, guys, as being the end-all, be-all. There's a lot of other aspects that come into who's going to win an election, not just polling. It could be the ground game, the ability to get people out to the polls. All these things factor in, okay? But I like to bring attention to New Hampshire because I find that to be the most interesting place, right? Bernie, up 7 points. Up 7 points. Biden, up 3 points. And Warren, down 13 points. Guys, there have been a couple people who have been upset with me because they like Elizabeth Warren. And look, like I said before, I don't begrudge anybody. If you support whoever you support, I'm sure you support them for a good reason. I'm hoping at the end of the day that you will join our big tent in the Bernie Sanders wing and become a Bernie Sanders supporter when this is all said and done, because I believe that's the future of not only the Democratic Party but the country. But I digress. We got to call it what it is. Now, Bernie Sanders was down 13 points in New Hampshire. People be telling him to drop out. They were telling him to drop out when he wasn't down 13 points. So we got Elizabeth Warren down 13 points. She throws the Hail Mary by pulling in Julian Castro, who's doing his best Chris Christie, somebody shoot me impersonation. And she dances about on stage. I need to run that clip. Maybe we'll put that clip in here. But look, I'm just saying, guys, if you're down 13 points, that's a big dip. Pete was down 3, and that's worth conversating, but she had 4 times the slide of Mayor Pete. Amy Klobuchar up 4. I didn't say it was fair, I didn't say it was right. I wonder what Amy Klobuchar is doing rising too. But there has to be a reason. There's a disconnection between Elizabeth Warren and the voter interest, or what she's talking about, or something's going on. And I think it was the fact that she started moving away from core policies, name it, and I'm talking about Medicare for All, which makes, I think, a lot of progressive voters or people who are in support of Medicare for All go, well, if you don't support that, then that's kind of a deal breaker. Insurance or health coverage is the biggest issue in the independents and in the Democratic Party. There's no other issue more relevant, more important to voters than health coverage. So if you get that one wrong, and you're not Joe Biden, and you're not Mayor Pete, then that's going to be a problem. It's very simple. All right? And I know it's a tough race. I mean, we got Elizabeth Warren, we got Bernie Sanders, and we got Michael Bloomberg. I mean, it couldn't get more contentious. Now, and there's just something else that was brought out in this clip here. Foreign policy is never a barometer for judging candidates in the Democratic Party. It's never been an issue that moved an election. I'm not saying that's right. I'm not saying that's cool. I'm not saying I agree with it. I'm saying that's just reality. This is why people get mad at me. They want to hear it their way. This is the truth, guys. It's not just me saying it. Whoever this guy is from the MSNBC, contributor guy, he's right. I've never met a person in the hood ever talked to about politics who was like, man, our foreign policy is so bad, I'm going to vote for such and such because their foreign policy is so much better. Nor do people that I typically know, the people that I know that I have daily interactions with, people that I grew up with, I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I'm saying it's my experience. It's anecdotal, but I've been on the earth a while. Nor have I heard people say, Tim Black, oh my God, if they weren't spending this money on war, they'd spend it on the poor. Because when they weren't spending money on the poor or on the money on the war, they weren't spending it on the poor. So you can't just say, oh, if we stop spending money on war, we're going to spend it on the poor, because they come up with something. They always come up with something, don't they, Johnson? Whether it's a space army or some other government program that they want to, that helps corporations or something. I don't know. More tax breaks for the rich. I don't know. So that's the fight. That is the fight, guys. Also discussing this clip, is I don't even know how you explain this. How do you explain that people think Biden has the best chance of beating Donald Trump? I'll tell you what I think. This is what I think. This is why I think that these voters assume that Joe Biden would be the better combatant to take on Donald Trump in a general election. It's because they think that more of their friends support Biden. They think that, he must have more support, so therefore, he would be the better candidate. It's a mind thing. It's where they just assume, based on all of the media that's out there, that keeps on saying that Joe Biden is most electable, Joe Biden is most electable, that media is actually accurate. They do not know that media cannot be trusted. That media is a liar. It's a liar, liar. Iran on fire. It's a fallacy. There is no data out there that says that Joe Biden will be. In fact, if you look at history, if history tells you anything, Joe Biden has never won a delegate. He's ran for president 1, 2, and maybe 2.5 times. He's never won a single delegate, ever. All right, so there it is. And the main reason why he keeps getting reelected in Delaware, or he was reelected in Delaware so many times, is that he sucked up the most to Wall Street. He sucked up the most to big pharmaceuticals. He sucked up the most to the corporations in Delaware, so he could outspend his closest competitor 5-1. That's really the strength of Joe Biden. What I also find very daunting about this survey, or about this polling data, is the fact that enthusiasm. Now, when we talk about what wins elections, one of the things that win elections, we discussed it briefly earlier. It's not just the polling, it's the ability to get the people that are polling to the polls. It's the ability to get the people that you never call up and never ever represented in your poll to the polls. And what does that, guys? What does that, Wolfpack? A ground game. A great ground game. Grassroots. Enthusiasm. Most enthusiastic group of supporters, Bernie Sanders, hands down, bar none. This is what the data shows. Once again, the data is just a snapshot in time. But if you factor in the fact that Bernie Sanders has been campaigning since 2015, has offices all across the country, has an organization called Our Revolution that started building that infrastructure back in 2015, 2016, and then we have these candidates that are trying to catch up. Well, what do you have? I think that when they do this polling, they say, who you think is more likely to be able to defeat Donald Trump? The people that are answering these questions are not privy to the information that I just gave you. What they are privy to is ranting or commentary that is unsubstantiated from organizations like MSNBC, CNN, CBS, ABC, and the like. And they're just repeating what they heard. But on the ground, it's a different story, guys. There's a commenter in my YouTube comment section said on the video that I put a lot of work into. They said, Tim Black, I love your show, Tim Black. You're one of the best commentators, one of the most entertaining and informative commentators I've ever met on YouTube. Why don't you have more subscribers? Without me having to say a word, someone said it for me. They said, well, YouTube's not recommending his videos to new subscribers. That's why, Johnson. And that, my friends, is the situation that we have. One way to mitigate that is to have people actually join the Tim Black Wolfpack. You do that by going to patreon.com, Tim's Take Live. You do that also on YouTube by becoming a member. I appreciate you, Johnson. All right.